Christmas Eve, 1945. In a quiet town in West Virginia, a fire erupts in the middle of the night. A family rushes to escape the flames, but when the smoke clears, 5 children are missing. Were they consumed by the fire or taken by someone in the dark? December 24, 1945, at around 1:30 at night, Fayetteville, West Virginia, USA, and Souders residence, a fire breaks out. George and Jenny Souders were sleeping inside the house with their 9 children. Now, as soon as George senses the fire, he leaves the house with his wife and 4 children on the lower floor. But 5 children were still trapped in the 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. To save them, George enters the house again, but the stairs of the wooden house were burnt, through which it was not possible to reach the top. Now George immediately runs outside, where he had a ladder. But what is this? Last night, where he had kept the ladder, it was not there. And even after searching a lot, he did not find that ladder. In this situation, George tries to get the support of his 2 coal trucks standing nearby. Their plan was that they will keep a coal truck near the house and climb on it, break the glass window of the 2nd floor and enter inside. But due to extreme cold, both the coal trucks do not start. They also had a water barrel with which they could extinguish the fire. But again, due to extreme cold, its water was also frozen. Now in this situation, George tries to break the upper window through a wall outside the house so that they can climb there. But they are not able to climb there. On the contrary, their hands are also injured due to the glass. Now 19-year-old Marion, who was one of the 4 children outside the house, she immediately runs to the neighbor's house and calls the fire brigade from their telephone. But no one picks up the call from the other side. Another neighbor also tries to call the fire brigade from his telephone, but he also does not get any response. In this situation, they take out their car and go to the office of the fire department to ask for help. There they meet the chief of the fire department, F.J. Morris, to whom they explain the whole situation and ask for help as soon as possible. Now George Souders and the rest of the people were watching their house burn after all the efforts, which collapses after about 45 minutes. But the firefighters reached there at 8 a.m. That too when the fire department was just 4 kilometers away from Souders residence. Now look, there were some reasons behind this too. It was just a few months after the end of World War II, and most of the workforce was in rest mode. On top of that, it was Christmas Eve that night. Secondly, at that time, the firefighters did not have any siren or advanced technology. When someone called the fire brigade, a man would pick up the call and then go to his house to call all his staff manually. Fire Chief F.J. Morris says that he was on duty, but he could not reach Souders residence because he did not know how to drive a fire truck. Now look, no matter what the reason is, the reality was that by the time the fire brigade reached for help, Souders residence had literally turned into ashes. Now in this pile of ashes, the bodies of 5 Souders children are found, but nothing is found there. F.J. Morris believed that by burning in the fire, all these bodies would have completely turned into ashes. But here, the story leaves some strange questions in our mind. George Souders said that he had called his other 5 children many times to alert them, but there was no response from above. In an interview with a newspaper called Raleigh Register, Marion also revealed that she had never seen any child awake from the window above. Now this is only possible when all the children are already unconscious or there is no one in the room. But the twist is that for the first time Jenny had seen fire, and according to her, it started near the telephone line and fuse box, which was on the lower floor. So how is it possible that the children sleeping on the upper floor become unconscious due to the fire below and nothing happens to the people below? Now this unsolved question brings George and Jenny to a new conclusion, and they believe that their children were not dead, but they have been kidnapped. And this fire in their house was only set up to distract this kidnapping. Now one proof of this claim was that in the police investigation, where the fire was considered to be faulty wiring, there was a claim of the Souders family that they had checked the wiring well some time ago and they did not find any such fault then. Even when it was investigated later, there was no evidence of the reason for the fire being faulty wiring. So was the Souders children really kidnapped? Before discussing the answer to this question, we have to know the history of the Souders family. So see George Souders, who was the head of this family. His real name was Giorgio Souders, and he was born in Sardinia, Italy. At the age of 13, George leaves Italy with his elder brother and comes to America as an immigrant. Now George never liked to discuss why and how he came here. Now it is possible that he was involved in some crime or illegal activity there and fled to America for fear of punishment. After coming to America, Giorgio, who had now become George, starts working in the construction of Pennsylvania's railroad. Then after a while, he works as a driver in a place called Souders in West Virginia and ultimately opens his own trucking company. He meets Jenny and Souders, whose family was also from Italy. And both of them get married in 1922. Now after a while, they both start living in the Fayetteville of West Virginia, where apart from them, there was a very large population of immigrant Italians. Now the trucking business that George had started, it was very successful. And they get very rich, which gives a lot of respect to the Italian people in their community. Now George was a man with a very strong political opinion, who used to speak against the dictator Benito Mussolini, who was ruling Italy at that time. Now some people liked what he said, and many of them used to have a heated argument with him. Now let me also tell you that George and Jenny's second eldest son, who served in the American military, and he also took part in World War II. At the time the Saudi residence was on fire, he was not at home. Now being against Mussolini, and George's son serving in the American military, it is believed that maybe this was the reason that the Saudi residence was damaged. And not just one, but many evidences were found. Because a few months before this incident, an insurance salesman came to the Saudi residence, with whom George's Mussolini was discussed. Now that salesman was so angry with him that he threatened George to set fire to his house and destroy the children. Now when another person came to George's house for some work, he told George that there will be fire in the fuse boxes of your house. A few days before this incident, George's eldest son noticed a strange car standing on the nearby highway, in which a person sitting was staring at his younger brothers and sisters coming from school, as if he was keeping an eye on them. But the strangest sequence happened that night when the Saudi residence was on fire. A few minutes before the fire, at around 12:30 at night, a telephone call comes, which is picked by Jenny. This call was of an unknown woman who was asking about another person whom Jenny did not know. Now in the background of that night, there was a sound of someone laughing loudly, and some celebration was also going on. In fact, while talking to Jenny, that woman also laughs in a very strange way. But Jenny just ignores it as a wrong call. Now after a while, at around 1 o'clock at night, Jenny again wakes up, because she feels as if something has hit the roof of the house and then fell down crying. However, after this, no sound comes and Jenny goes to sleep assuming it to be her imagination. Now after about half an hour of this incident, the house catches fire, as I have already told you that Jenny saw it first. But was there any conspiracy being made against George Souders and his family? And did something really hit the roof of the Souders residence that night? A few days after this incident, when the Souders couple comes there with their younger daughter Sylvia, then Sylvia finds a hard object of rubber in a pile of ashes. Now George looking at it tells that this is not a normal piece of rubber, but a pineapple bomb hand grenade, and maybe this was thrown on the Souders residence that night. Means most probably this fire was not caused by faulty wiring. But the question was that where did the Souders children go? Now according to F.J. Morris, both the bodies and bones of all 5 children were burnt to ashes. But Jenny was not ready to believe this. Now Jenny gets information from a local crematory nearby that even after burning a human body at 1090 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, its bones do not turn into ashes. And the Souders residence was only on fire for 45 minutes. In fact, there were also pieces of household appliances in this ash, but there was no trace of human bones. So was the Souders children kidnapped before the house caught fire? According to some reported sightings, the answer to this is probably yes. A woman claims that when the Souders residence was on fire, at the same time she saw her children leaving a car. Another woman who runs a shop about 80 kilometers away from Fayetteville, she claims that the next morning of this incident, a car came to her shop with those children and they also had breakfast. Now according to that woman, that car was a Florida number plate. A few days after this incident, a female staff of Charleston Hotel also claims that she saw these children in her hotel. Now these children were with 2 men and 2 women who seemed to be of Italian origin. That female staff tries to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but one of them gets very angry at her and does not let her talk to the children. They stay in a big room in the hotel at night and leave there in the morning. Apart from all this, many people also claim to have seen the Souders children, but neither did they get any proof of their truth, nor those 5 children. In 1947, when George and Jenny had no hope, they started writing letters to the FBI, and a similar letter is received by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Now basically in these letters, they both requested the FBI to investigate this case, on which J. Edgar Hoover says that he wants to help them, but this case is local and does not fall under their investigative jurisdiction. Hoover says that he had also offered help to local authorities in the investigation, but the Fayetteville Police and the fire department rejected his offer. When George and Jenny did not get the support of the government and agencies, they decided to investigate the case on their level and hire a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley. But was C.C. Tinsley's inclusion in this case able to give it a new direction? Well, yes and maybe no. Look, Tinsley found out a new thing here, which was not revealed earlier. It was that the investigation team that told the faulty wire the reason for the fire in the Souders residence, George's enemy, was also included in it. And he was none other than the insurance salesman, who himself threatened to burn George's house and destroy his children. But was any action taken against that salesman? Well, not at all. George had no evidence of his threats, and it was foolishness to put a person in doubt without evidence. That is, there was no significant progress in the case. Now in the year 1949, George asks a pathologist named Oscar Hunter to look for evidence of bones in the ashes of his burnt house again, and this time he also finds some pieces of human vertebrae. A forensic investigation reveals that this person must have been at least 17 and a maximum of 22 years old, while Souders' oldest missing child, Morris, was only 14 years old. Now later it is found that these pieces of bones must have come here from Mount Hope Cemetery nearby with soil, and they had no connection with the Souders family. Now see, the police had given up till now, and the case of the Souders children is closed by declaring it unsolved. But the Souders couple still does not give up. And flyers are printed in which it was said to give a reward of $5,000 to the person who gave the address of their children. Even at the place where their burnt house was found, there, in the year 1952, they put up a big billboard on which the photos and stories of the Souders children were written. In the year 1969, George dies, and then in 1989, Jenny also leaves this world. Then that billboard is removed from there. But all these attempts were unsuccessful in the search of the Souders children, and even today it has remained an unsolved mystery. Decades of searching, countless theories, and a family's lifelong hope, yet the truth remains buried in mystery. Did the children vanish in the fire, or were they stolen away in the night? Nearly 80 years later, the question still haunts Fayetteville, and the world may never know the answer.